Now, let's dive deep into this big story for today. I'm Alex Morash, and let's queer up politics. Far-right commentator Charlie Kirk killed in Utah campus shooting. Charlie Kirk, the far-right activist known for his outspoken anti-LGBTQ+ views, was shot and killed on Wednesday during a campus event at Utah Valley University in Orem. He was 31. Authorities say the shooting happened while Kirk was on stage for his American Comeback Tour. A graphic video from the event captured the moment a single shot rang out. Kirk flinched and appeared to be struck in the neck before collapsing. The Utah Department of Public Safety said the shot is believed to have been fired from the roof of the Losee Center, a building that houses academic advising, tutoring, and other student support services. DPS Commissioner Beau Mason said only one shot was fired and Kirk was the sole victim. Kirk first rose to prominence in his early 20s, founding Turning Point USA, becoming a central figure in the American rights youth movement. He built close ties with President Donald Trump and turned Turning Point into a media and organizing powerhouse. But Kirk also built his reputation on inflammatory rhetoric targeting LGBTQ+ communities. He spread disinformation about transgender people, gender-affirming care, and even claimed in 2022 that, quote, transgender people were to blame for inflation, end quote. He also drew outrage when he said that January 6th rioters would have faced lighter punishments if they had stripped naked and filmed themselves having gay sex. Kirk is also famously associated with anti-gay marriage comments. The FBI's Salt Lake City field office said it has devoted, quote, full resources, end quote, to the investigation and has launched a public tip line. For now, officials stress the campus is secure, but the investigation into who killed Charlie Kirk and why remain ongoing. Queer News Tonight continues to report a significant increase in political violence in America and firmly support that political differences of opinion should be accepted and tolerated. Violence is never a good choice in our society. You know, I've been thinking for a while when I first heard it happen, what to talk about and how to look at it. And like, a lot of people, want to talk about what is political violence. And the first thing I see everyone say is like, oh, political violence has no place in our society. And I'll be honest, that's an easy cop-out about what is happening to our society. Because political violence, especially when you're not talking about, the difference between something like the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, that's political violence. But there was a whole mechanism and a movement of people for it. What we're seeing now is not so much a building up of trying to create something or fight back against an evil. We're seeing a collapse of a society's norms. And we're seeing this at the same time that, we just saw it happen in Nepal, where they're out in the streets. They've had to overthrow their government right now. And when people ask, what do you want to, what should we make sense of all this? And I would say, my final thought on this is just, Charlie Kirk is associated with a regime that's in power today that has shown again and again it does not value human life, it does not respect the rule of law. And if you are going to lead a country like that, how can you expect your population, your civilian, your populace, to respect the rule of law or human life?
Exactly. And I just want to point out that, while right now Trump and many other Republicans in the House and Senate were screaming that we don't pay enough, their opponents do not pay enough respect for Charlie Kirk. Let us remind them that in June, when Minnesota state Senate leader was assassinated in her own home, along with her husband and her dog, that Trump has decided not to drop his flag to half-mast, and most on the right-wing circuit were celebrating. Now, I'm not going to celebrate anyone's death. I'm not that craven. But I do want to point out that Charlie Kirk insists that he is a quote-unquote free speech warrior and want to open to hear the other side. And yet, these are some of the quotes that I can pull from his long time on the air. In January 2024, on his own show, he said, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he is qualified, end quote. On gender, he said, quote, the answer is yes, the baby will be delivered. When someone asked him if his own daughter was assaulted and result in pregnancy at 10 years old, whether whether he will force his own daughter to give birth. And then he also said, quote, "We need to have a Nuremberg-style trial for every gender-affirming clinic doctor. We need it immediately," end quote. So he has a long time blaming everyone in the society who's not white, cisgender, Christian nationalist, male like him. That's, apparently everyone else caused all the problems in the world, but not them.
And, my condolences to his family. You don't want to see anyone killed. However, the Turning Point organization has a history of mimicking and repeating history, the brown shirts in Nazi Germany, going out and organizing students to be hateful. There are allegations that they often treated minority members who wanted to join Turning Point and really treated them poorly. And often the members, there was infighting within, and they turned against, minority members. Mm-hmm. One of the ironic things that took place was a question came from the audience member, an audience member right before he was shot, seconds before he was shot. And they were talking about gun violence. And the person from the audience, who has, I believe, yet to be identified, asked, "Do you know how many transgender Americans have been mass murderers over the last 10 years? And Mr. Kirk responded, quote, "Too many," which resulted in cheers from the crowd. After the individual said there had been 5. They then asked the conservative political activist how many mass shootings there had been in the U.S. in the past decade. Uttering his last words, Mr. Kirk asked, quote, "Counting or not counting gang violence," end quote, before the sniper's bullet took him. So certainly we don't wish death on anyone. However, it's ironic he was talking about gun violence when he met his mind.
And if we are going to go with gun violence, I have another quote. And he said it in 2023, quote, "I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. This is a prudent deal. It is rational." I'm going to guess that when he said it, he didn't expect the sacrifice on the altar is going to be him.
But, I would have, this falls right at 9/11. Mm-hmm. So people's emotions are high right at this point. I would have liked to have turned the TV on and see the president make a very heartful speech about 9/11 and people versus accusing the Democrats for being, it's their fault and everything else. I would have liked to pull the country together versus pulling it apart. And that's what I would have liked to see.
And this is right one now. Of the worst things about this is Charlie Kirk does not deserve this much attention. Let's just be perfectly. There was an active shooter situation at the exact same time. We don't wish death on people, but this is America. Shootings happen all the time. He should not be given this additional attention, quite frankly.
And not to take away from his death and how horrible it is, but he was an activist. Bobby brought up that a congresswoman from the Midwest and her husband and dog were killed, and there was no response
from the other side.
The thing that should really scare us all is that the response tends to be, we want it to be okay for us to do that, but not for you to do it to us. The fact that Trump, his Governor Greg Abbott pardoned Daniel Perry, who killed a Black Lives Matter activist. Kyle Rittenhouse was found not guilty after killing 2 people. And then this president, who's talking about how he just doesn't think this is appropriate, he pardoned an enormous amount of people for taking part in the January 6th insurrection. When you collapse, when the rule of law completely collapses as it has under Trump, I just don't know where we go from here.
And there were people, going after Pence. I mean, how horrific. And you wonder what would have happened if they had caught up.
They were going after Pence because he wasn't doing what Trump wanted him to do.
Mm-hmm. And also, and let's bring it to Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania was under attack. They literally tried to burn his house to govern the mansions down.
Yes.
And when Paul Pelosi, the husband of Nancy Pelosi, was attacked, the right wing has all the jokes. I mean, Donald Trump Jr. even have a tweet saying, posing in his with a pair of underwear and a hammer, and say that this is going to be his Halloween costume.
And this isn't new. Almost every group I've worked for has dealt with political violence in the last 15 years.
To make him a martyr, and then you look at, them, the right wing, and especially here in Florida, where they're erasing our rainbow crosswalks. You know, how dare they erase the rainbow crosswalks honoring the lives of the 49 people who lost their lives, and erasing that like it's just so much of nothing, and they're making this gentleman into a martyr.
But you know, rainbow crosswalks aren't killing anybody. Guns are. So, I mean, they're totally avoiding any type of subject.
That's true, but like once you start deciding some lives matter and some lives don't, it's a dark place that you never really see a victory from.
Well, that is a big LGBTQ story for today. There are no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.